For untold centuries, the turbid waters of the Colorado River battered their way through the forbidding canyons of its 1,700-mile course, traversing the arid Southwest. For the most part, little known except to the native Indians and a few parties of intrepid explorers. Draining a vast region of mountain and desert, entering 7 of the largest western states, it poured its waters southward into the Gulf of California, carrying into its delta a tremendous volume of silt, and periodically overflowing the prosperous towns and rich agricultural districts near its mouth with devastating floods. From the time of its discovery, it remained a challenge to engineers who sought to control it, until the enactment in 1928 of the Boulder Canyon Project Act, authorizing the construction of Boulder Dam. In Black Canyon, where the Colorado River forms the boundary between Nevada and Arizona, in the very heart of the great desert of the Southwest, the United States Department of the Interior, through its Bureau of Reclamation, was directed to proceed with the construction of this mightiest of dams. Highways were pushed across the desert. Railroad lines thrust their ribbons of steel through the sagebrush and cactus, and transmission lines for construction power were brought hundreds of miles across the heat-stricken wastelands of the southern Nevada desert. Every section of the country was called upon to contribute to the staggering quantity and wide diversity of materials required. Thousands of tons of steel, millions of barrels of cement, machinery, gasoline and oil by the thousands of gallons, tools, building materials, all these and much more were concentrated at the site of operations in an endless stream. The engineering forces completed their surveys, working under the most hazardous conditions, and every union furnished its quota of laborers and artisans. In what had once been an uninhabited, waterless desert, supporting only a sparse, inhospitable growth of chaparral and cactus, the beautiful little town of Boulder City was built within the short space of 15 months to house the army of 5,000 men to be employed. Here was no construction camp such as was known in the early days of the West. Instead, Boulder City was developed as a model town, furnishing every facility and convenience to its inhabitants. 4 churches, a modern, fully equipped school, and various civic organizations met the cultural requirements of the community, while a theater and several clubs furnished recreation. A thriving business section developed along the principal streets, while pleasant homes surrounded by gardens faced the broad tree-lined residential avenues of this modern, spotless town. The buildings housing the offices of the Bureau of Reclamation and the Civic Administration, which operated directly under the federal government, were set in the midst of pleasant parks, which were welcome havens of rest after the day's labors in a country where the summer temperature often reaches 125 degrees above zero. In the business section of the town, arcades formed a protection against the tropic sun. Lovely flower gardens bloomed in marked contrast with the surrounding desert. Lining street after street, the white cottages of the married workmen recalled to mind the military camps of 1918, while single men were housed in air-cooled dormitories, each accommodating 176 occupants. Under conditions which would have gained the wholehearted approval of any modern housewife, tons of food were prepared and served daily in the sanitary, electrically equipped kitchens. A corps of cooks and waiters was able to feed as many as 1,300 men at one setting of the tables. Menus were varied and the food was of excellent quality. As Boulder City was about 7 miles distant from the dam site, it was necessary to provide transportation for the workmen to and from the job. This was accomplished by a fleet of passenger motor trucks, some of them carrying as many as 160 men. A 24-hour day was divided into 3 shifts of 8 hours each for all classes of labor. The 4th of July, Labor Day, and Christmas were the only holidays observed. Once the rapid tempo of the ambitious construction schedule was established and underway toward the marking of a record-breaking achievement in American engineering history. It was in March 1931 that 6 Companies Incorporated of San Francisco, California, was awarded the general contract for the construction of the project, including Boulder Dam and its appurtenant works. And by early summer of the same year, preliminary construction work was in full swing in Black Canyon. During this early period of construction, before roads had been built into the depths of the gorge, men and materials were forced to take to boats or travel the catwalks, often swung between the sheer walls of the canyon at dizzy heights above the muddy waters of the world's most dangerous river. It was not long before roads and rail lines had penetrated into the very lowest reaches of the canyon, To provide these arteries of transportation, thousands of tons of virgin rock were blasted from the age-old walls of the gorge. Thus, the first thunders of man's determination to conquer the Colorado River reverberated between the sheer cliffs of the canyon, which heretofore had known only the hot silence of the desert and the roar of the river's angry floods. The boring of 4 diversion tunnels to carry the stream around the dam site during construction, 2 on each side of the river, 56 feet in diameter and averaging 4,000 feet in length, constituted the first major construction operation. The drilling jumbos used on this job were mounted on motor trucks to facilitate handling and were capable of driving from 24 to 30 powder holes into the heading simultaneously by means of drifter drills. The tunnels were excavated through the rock simultaneously from 4 headings, 1 at either end and 2 boring in opposite directions from a river-level auxiliary tunnel located about midway on the main bore. A pioneer drift was drilled at top line and closely followed by the excavation for the complete 56-foot bore. Thousands of tons of drilled steel were used in this work, and the sharpening shops were kept working at top speed night and day to maintain a steady supply. After the powder holes had been drilled and the rock blasted, power shovels and trucks moved into the tunnels for the purpose of removing the shattered material. An unbroken parade of heavy-duty trucks, each handling from 8 to 10 tons of rock, labored up over the steep roads cut into the canyon walls to dispose of the material in the gulches adjacent to the dam site. This phase of the task, which entailed the excavation and the handling of over 1.5 million cubic yards of material, was completed within a period of 13 months and was considered the most grueling portion of the work for both men and machinery. After the tunnels had been excavated, they were lined with concrete, 3 feet in thickness. Due to the unprecedented size of the bores, special equipment was designed